The dust never settled in Redemption Creek. It hung in the air like a shroud, turning the sunset into a bleeding wound across the sky. Jake Sullivan stood on the porch of his weathered cabin, watching another day die over the Arizona territory. The year was 1882, and the West was still wild enough to kill a man for looking sideways at another's horse. Jake's calloused hands gripped the porch rail, knuckles white against the splintered wood. At 34, he'd already lived more lifetimes than most men ever would. The war had taken his youth, the frontier had taken his innocence, and time had taken everything else. All that remained was this cabin, built with his own hands from the stubborn earth and even more stubborn will. The town below sprawled like a festering wound in the valley. Redemption Creek had sprouted up around a dried riverbed, fed by the hopes of prospectors and the desperation of those with nowhere else to go. Saloons outnumbered churches 5-1, and the law was whatever man had the fastest draw that particular day. Jake pulled the crumpled paper from his vest pocket, smoothing it against his thigh. The words he'd penned 3 weeks ago stared back at him, each letter a testament to his loneliness. Respectable man seeks wife for companionship and household duties. Must be of good character, hardy constitution, and Christian values. Willing to provide stable home and protection. Inquire at Redemption Creek General Store. He'd paid Tom McKenna at the store $2 to post it, enduring the old man's knowing smirk. Word traveled fast in a town this small, and Jake had already heard the whispers. Sullivan's finally gone soft, they said, looking for a woman to warm his bed like he's ordering from a catalog. Let them talk. They didn't know what it was like to wake up to silence so thick it pressed against your ears. They didn't know how the cold seeped into your bones during those long winter nights. No amount of whiskey able to chase it away. The sound of raucous laughter drifted up from the Silver Dollar Saloon, punctuated by the tinny notes of a piano badly in need of tuning. Jake's jaw tightened. He'd been in that saloon exactly twice since settling in Redemption Creek, both times to collect bounties. The place reeked of sweat, cheap perfume, and broken dreams, as if summoned by his thoughts. The saloon's doors burst open, spilling light and noise into the street. A figure emerged, silhouetted against the lamplight. Even from this distance, Jake could tell it was a woman by the way she moved, all hips and defiance, like she owned the very ground she walked on. She paused in the street, tipping her head back to look at the stars. Her auburn hair caught the light from the saloon windows, burning like fire against the darkness. Then someone called from inside, a man's voice slurred with drink, and she laughed, a sound like whiskey and smoke and something dangerous. "Rosalie, get back in here. Girl, these gentlemen are paying good money for your company." She turned, hands on her hips, and Jake could practically see the smirk on her face even from 100 yards away. "They can wait, Frank. The night's not going anywhere, and neither is their money." "Rosalie." Jake rolled the name around in his mind like a smooth stone. A saloon girl. Then, one of those women who danced with lonely men and laughed at their jokes for the price of a drink and maybe something more. The kind of woman a respectable man looking for a wife should have no business thinking about. She sauntered back into the saloon, the doors swinging shut behind her like the end of a show. Jake found himself staring at those doors longer than he should have, something stirring in his chest that felt too much like interest. The next morning came too soon and not soon enough. Jake made his way down the hill into town, boots raising small clouds of dust with each step. The sun was already brutal, baking the earth into hardpan and making the air shimmer like water. McKenna's General Store sat in the middle of Main Street, a 2-story building that served as post office, supply depot, and gossip hub for Redemption Creek. Jake pushed through the door, the bell above announcing his arrival with a cheerful jangle that seemed out of place in this hard land. Jake Sullivan. Tom McKenna looked up from his ledger, spectacles perched on the end of his nose. "Come to check on your advertisement. Any responses?" Tom's face fell slightly. "Well, now, it's only been 3 weeks. These things take time. Mail's slow out here, and respectable women, He trailed off, adjusting his spectacles. They're scarce. Jake finished. I know. But don't you worry, I'm sure the right woman will come along. Why, just last year, Bob Martinez found himself a nice widow from Santa Fe through a similar arrangement. Course, she did run off with that traveling preacher after 2 months. But the bell jangled again, cutting off Tom's rambling. Jake turned to see her standing in the doorway. The woman from last night. In daylight, she was even more striking. Her dress was crimson silk, inappropriate for the hour and certainly for a general store. Her green eyes swept the room with the calculating gaze of a card-sharp sizing up marks. "Morning, Tom," she said, her voice carrying that same whiskey and smoke quality Jake had imagined. "Frank sent me for supplies." Tom's demeanor shifted, becoming carefully polite but distant. "Miss Rosalie, I'll get your order ready." She leaned against the counter, seemingly unaware or uncaring of Jake's presence. But then she spoke without looking at him. "You're Jake Sullivan, the one looking for a bride." It wasn't a question. Jake felt heat rise in his neck. "That's right." Now she turned, those green eyes finding his with unsettling directness. Up close, he could see the freckles scattered across her nose, the small scar on her chin. She was younger than he'd thought, maybe 25, but her eyes held the weight of someone who'd seen too much too soon. "Cowboy wanted a bride to warm his home," she said, a mocking smile playing at her lips. "How romantic. Tell me, Mr. Sullivan, what makes you think any respectable woman would want to live in that shack on the hill with a man who advertises for a wife like he's buying cattle?" Jake's hands clenched at his sides, but he kept his voice level. "I'm offering an honest arrangement, protection, stability, a home." "A home?" She laughed, that dangerous sound from the night before. "Is that what you call it? Looks more like a prison to me. A woman goes in there. She might never come out again. Just another ghost in this godforsaken desert." "Miss Rosalie," Tom interjected nervously. "Your supplies are ready." She ignored him, stepping closer to Jake. He could smell her perfume now, jasmine and something darker, like gunpowder. "You want some advice? Cowboy, stop looking for a saint to save you. Saints don't last long out here. What you need is someone who's already been through hell and knows how to survive it." For a moment, they stood there, locked in some kind of challenge Jake didn't fully understand. Then she swept past him, collecting her package from Tom and heading for the door. She paused at the threshold, glancing back over her shoulder. "Good luck with your advertisement, Mr. Sullivan. I hope you find what you're looking for." The words should have sounded sincere, but coming from her lips, they felt like a curse. The door closed behind her with another jangle, leaving Jake standing in the sudden silence. Tom cleared his throat awkwardly. "Don't mind her? Jake, saloon girls like that. They're bitter about their lot in life, always trying to drag others down with them." Jake nodded absently, but his mind was elsewhere. Something about the encounter left him unsettled, like a horse sensing a storm on the horizon. He'd come to town looking for responses to his advertisement, hoping for letters from modest women seeking a new life. Instead, he'd found Rosalie, all fire and challenge and dangerous curves. "Let me know if any letters come," he told Tom, heading for the door. "Will do, Jake. And don't let her words get to you. The right woman's out there." Jake stepped back into the blazing sun. Squinting down the street toward the Silver Dollar, the saloon sat quiet in the morning light, deceptively peaceful, but he knew better. Come nightfall, it would spring to life again, full of laughter and music and women like Rosalie who danced on the edge of respectability. He should go home, should tend to his horses, mend the fence on the north pasture, do any of the 100 chores that always needed doing. Should forget about green eyes and mocking smiles and the way she'd said his name like she knew all his secrets. Instead, he found himself wondering what kind of woman chose that life. What had driven her to this dying town in the middle of nowhere? What ghosts haunted her nights? Cowboy wanted a bride to warm his home, she'd said, until a sassy saloon girl heated his bed until the frame snapped. Jake shook his head, trying to dislodge the thought. He'd posted that advertisement for a reason. He wanted stability, companionship, someone to share the burden of this harsh life. Not complications, not danger, and certainly not a woman who wore red silk before noon and smelled like jasmine and gunpowder. But as he climbed the hill back to his cabin, the dust swirling around his boots, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that his carefully ordered life was about to come apart at the seams. The West had a way of taking your plans and grinding them to dust, just like everything else under this merciless sun. In the distance, storm clouds gathered over the mountains, promising rain that might never come, or maybe it would come all at once. Flash floods washing away everything in their path. That was the way of things out here, drought or drowning, with nothing in between. Jake reached his cabin as the first rumbles of thunder echoed across the valley. He stood on his porch again, looking down at Redemption Creek, and wondered which kind of storm was heading his way. The storm never came. It hung over the mountains for 3 days, teasing the parched earth with its promise before moving on, leaving nothing but disappointment in its wake. Jake understood that feeling all too well. He sat in his cabin, cleaning his Winchester by lamplight, when the memories came calling like they always did when the night grew too quiet. Petersburg, 1864. The smell of gunpowder so thick it choked your lungs. Boys younger than he was now, crying for their mothers as their blood soaked into Virginia soil. He'd been 19, full of notions about honor and duty that the war beat out of him one bullet at a time. After the surrender, he'd drifted west like so many others, running from ghosts that followed anyway. His parents' farm in Ohio was ash by then, burned by raiders who didn't care which side you fought for. His sister Mary had died of fever while he was gone, and his brother Thomas, well, Thomas had worn blue while Jake wore gray, and that divide proved wider than any canyon. The Winchester's barrel gleamed in the lamplight, clean and ready. Jake set it aside and poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey. Outside, coyotes called to each other across the darkness, their cries echoing off the canyon walls. Lonely sound, but honest, not like the laughter that drifted up from the Silver Dollar every night. He'd been down there again yesterday, couldn't help himself. Told himself he needed supplies, but Tom's store didn't sell what he was looking for. He'd nursed a beer in the corner, watching Rosalie work the room like a queen holding court. She had a laugh for every man who bought her a drink, a smile that never quite reached her eyes. When she'd caught him staring, she'd raised her glass in a mocking toast before turning away. Meanwhile, down in the Silver Dollar, Rosalie counted her tips with fingers that ached from pouring drinks and deflecting grabbing hands. Another night, another collection of coins that would never add up to enough. The other girls had already retired, but she sat at the bar, her reflection in the mirror showing a woman she barely recognized. "You're thinking too hard again," Frank said, wiping down glasses with a gray rag. "Bad for business when my best girl looks like she's attending a funeral." "Maybe I am," Rosalie said. "This whole town's a graveyard. We're just too stubborn to lie down." Frank snorted. "That's whiskey talk. You know what your problem is. You think you're too good for this place." "Don't you?" "I know exactly what I am," Frank said. "A man making money off other men's loneliness. Least I'm honest about it." Rosalie turned away from the mirror. She'd been 20 when she'd stepped off the stage in Redemption Creek, running from a marriage that would have killed her slower, but just as surely as a bullet. Her father had promised her to Josiah Crenshaw, a man 3 times her age, with hands like ham hocks and a temper like wildfire. The bruises he'd left during their courtship had barely faded when she'd stolen enough money for passage west. 5 years now, she'd been dancing and pouring drinks and pretending to care about the stories these broken men told. 5 years of saving every penny she could, planning for the day she'd have enough to disappear again. Maybe California. Maybe somewhere nobody asked questions about your past. "That Sullivan fellow was in here again," Frank said, too casual. Watching you. Lots of men watch me. It's what they pay for. Not like him. Frank set down the glass, fixing her with a look. He's got that hunger in his eyes, the dangerous kind. Rosalie laughed, sharp and bitter. They've all got hunger in their eyes. No, Frank said. Most of them want what you're selling. Sullivan, he wants what you're not. She thought about those gray eyes, storm-colored and steady, the way he'd stood in Tom's store, taking her mockery without flinching. Most men would have snapped back or slunk away. He'd done neither, just looked at her like he was trying to solve a puzzle. Doesn't matter what he wants, she said. He's looking for a proper wife, good Christian woman to darn his socks and warm his bed. That's not me. No, Frank agreed. But you sure got him thinking it could be. The next morning brought an unexpected dust storm from the south, turning the air brown and thick. Rosalie wrapped a scarf around her face and fought her way to Tom's store for headache powder. The wind howled like a living thing, driving grit into every gap in her clothing. She stumbled through the door, gasping, and found Jake Sullivan already there. He looked up from his conversation with Tom, and something passed between them. Recognition. Maybe, or just the shared misery of being caught in this devil's weather. Miss Rosalie, Tom said, clearly uncomfortable. I'll get that headache powder. He scurried to the back, leaving them alone. Jake had turned back to the window, watching the storm rage. His shoulders were broad beneath his work shirt, hands scarred from years of hard labor. She wondered what those hands had done before they built fences and gentled horses. War? She asked, surprising herself. He glanced at her. What? The way you stand. Saw plenty of soldiers come through Kansas after the war. They all stood like that, like they were waiting for artillery to start falling. His jaw tightened. Confederate cavalry, you... My father served with the Union. Came back different. She paused. Came back mean. War does that to some men. His voice was quiet. Makes them realize how easy it is to hurt people. Some develop a taste for it. And you... He turned to face her fully. I learned how easy it is to die. Made me appreciate living, even when it's hard. The wind rattled the windows, and somewhere a shutter banged loose. Tom was taking his time with that headache powder. Is that why you want a wife? Rosalie asked. Appreciate living more with company. Something like that. But not company like mine. I never said that. She laughed, but there was no mockery in it this time. You didn't have to. Men like you don't marry women like me. We're good for a night's entertainment, maybe a few weeks of fun, but not for keeping. You don't know what kind of man I am. Sure I do. She moved closer, close enough to see the flecks of gold in his gray eyes. You're the kind who thinks he can save everyone. The kind who'd throw himself on a grenade to protect his squad. The kind who posts advertisements for a wife because he's too noble to just take what's freely offered. And what's freely offered? The question hung between them like a loaded gun. Rosalie felt her heart beat faster. And not from the storm. This was dangerous territory. The kind that got girls like her hurt. Nothing's free out here, she said finally. Everything costs something. Tom emerged from the back room, clutching a packet of powder like a life preserver. Here you are, Miss Rosalie. That'll be 15 cents. She paid and left without another word, plunging back into the storm. But she felt Jake's eyes on her until the door closed. And maybe even after. That night, the silver dollar was quieter than usual. The storm had kept many away, leaving only the dedicated drinkers and those with nowhere else to go. Rosalie dealt cards at a corner table, her movements automatic after years of practice. You're distracted, said Samuel Chen, the Chinese doctor who came in every Tuesday for exactly 2 drinks. Not like you. Storms got me unsettled. She lied. Ah, he studied his cards with the same intensity he probably examined patients. In my homeland, we say storms reveal truth. Blow away the dust. Show what lies beneath. All this storm's revealing is more dust. Samuel smiled. Perhaps you're not looking in the right places. At that moment, the door swung open. Jake Sullivan stood silhouetted against the storm, dust swirling around him like smoke. The saloon fell quiet for a heartbeat before resuming its muted revelry. He walked to the bar, ordered whiskey, then turned and looked directly at her. No pretense, no games. Just that steady gray gaze that made her want to run and stand her ground all at once. "Deal me in," he said, approaching the table. Samuel raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. Rosalie's hand stayed steady as she shuffled, but her pulse quickened. This was her territory, her rules, so why did she feel like prey? 5-card draw. She said dollar ante. Fair enough. They played in silence while the storm raged outside. Jake was good, better than most who sat at her table. He knew when to fold and when to push, reading the other players with the same careful attention he probably gave to reading the weather. "You've played before," she said. "Long nights in army camps. Not much else to do between battles. Win much. Enough to know when I'm being hustled." She smiled despite herself. "I'm not hustling you." "No," he agreed. "You're doing something worse." Before she could ask what he meant, the doors burst open again. This time it wasn't the wind. 3 men stumbled in, trail dust thick on their clothes despite the storm. Rosalie recognized the type drifters with hard eyes and harder hearts, the kind who left trouble in their wake. "Well, well," the tallest one said, scanning the room. "Looks like we found civilization. Boys." Frank appeared from behind the bar, shotgun subtle but present. "Welcome to the Silver Dollar. Gentlemen, first drinks on the house if you check your guns." The tall one smiled, showing too many teeth. "Now why would we do that? We're peaceful men. Aren't we peaceful? Boys." The other two laughed, an ugly sound. Rosalie felt the room tense, everyone calculating distances to doors and weapons. Jake had gone very still, the kind of still that preceded violence. "Saw your advertisement, friend," the tall one said, focusing on Jake. "Man looking for a wife. Figured this place would have women, and look here, we were right." His gaze slid to Rosalie like oil. "This one'll do nicely." "The lady's not interested," Jake said quietly. "Lady?" Another ugly laugh. "That's rich. Tell me, sweetheart, how much for some private company storm like this? Man needs warming up." Rosalie stood slowly, dignity wrapped around her like armor. "More than you can afford." The man's face darkened. He took a step forward, and suddenly Jake was between them, moving with that cavalry speed. The lady said no. For a moment, violence crackled in the air like lightning. Then the tall man smiled again, backing off with raised hands. "No trouble here, friend. Just making conversation." He looked around the room, memorizing faces. "We'll be staying in town a few days. I'm sure we'll all get better acquainted." They left as suddenly as they'd come, but the threat lingered like smoke. Frank lowered his shotgun, and conversations slowly resumed. "You shouldn't have done that," Rosalie said to Jake. "Someone had to. I can take care of myself." "I know." He turned back to the table, gathering his winnings. "But sometimes it's nice not to have to." He left before she could respond, disappearing into the storm. Samuel Chen watched him go, then turned to Rosalie with that knowing smile. "Still think you're looking in the wrong places." She didn't answer. Outside, the wind howled its secrets to anyone brave enough to listen, and somewhere in that chaos, Jake Sullivan made his way home alone, wondering why the warmth of the saloon felt more like home than his empty cabin ever had. The trouble started 2 nights later. Rosalie was serving drinks when she heard the crash of breaking furniture, followed by a woman's scream. The 3 drifters from the storm had cornered one of the younger girls, Beth, barely 17 and new to the life. "Come on, sweetheart. The tall one slurred. His hand twisted in Beth's hair. "Don't be unfriendly." Frank was already moving, but not fast enough. The second drifter caught him across the jaw with a bottle, sending him sprawling. The shotgun skittered across the floor. "Nobody move." The third man had drawn iron, waving his pistol at the frozen patrons. "We're just having some fun." Rosalie's mind raced. The other girls had fled upstairs. Most of the customers were townsmen, soft from easy living. But from the corner of her eye, she saw movement near the door. Jake Sullivan stepped inside, taking in the scene with one swift glance. He moved like smoke, quiet and deadly. The man with the pistol never saw the chair that caught him behind the knees, sending him tumbling. Jake's boot connected with his wrist, the gun spinning away. The tall one released Beth. Going for his own weapon? Rosalie didn't think. She grabbed a bottle and brought it down on his head with all her strength. He dropped like a stone. The third man charged Jake, and they went down in a tangle of fists and fury. Jake fought with economical brutality. No wasted motion, army training, Rosalie realized. Kill or be killed, beaten into muscle memory. When the dust settled, the three drifters lay groaning on the saloon floor. Jake stood, breathing hard, blood trickling from a split lip. His eyes found Rosalie's across the chaos. "You all right?" She nodded, still gripping the broken bottleneck. "Beth." The girl was sobbing in the corner, but unharmed. Frank was pulling himself up, jaw already swelling. "Get them out," Jake said to the few men brave enough to help. "Put them on their horses and point them toward the next town. Tell them if they come back, they'll leave in boxes." Nobody argued. As the drifters were dragged out, Jake turned to Rosalie. "You need to clean that cut." She looked down, surprised to find blood on her hand where the bottle had sliced her palm. The adrenaline faded, leaving her shaky. "I'll manage." "Like hell." He took her arm, gentle but insistent. "Where's the kitchen?" She led him through the back, aware of every eye following them. In the small kitchen, he pumped water into a basin and took her hand in his. His touch was careful, clinical, but she felt it like fire. "This might sting." He cleaned the wound with whiskey from a nearby bottle. "I've had worse." "I imagine you have." He tore a strip from a clean dish rag, wrapping her palm with practiced ease. "You didn't hesitate. With the bottle. Neither did you, with the chair." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Old habits. From the war. From surviving." He finished the bandage, but didn't release her hand. "Those men will be back. Their kind always comes back." "I know." "You should leave town for a while. Visit relatives. Take a trip." "I don't have relatives, and the only trips I take are in my dreams." She pulled her hand away. "This is my life, Jake, such as it is." "It doesn't have to be." The words hung between them. Outside, she could hear Frank getting the saloon back in order, Beth's quiet sobs, the nervous laughter of men who'd come close to violence. "What are you offering?" she asked quietly. "I don't know." The admission seemed to surprise him. "I came to town looking for a simple life. A quiet wife, a peaceful home. Then you—" "Then I what?" He met her eyes. "Then you laughed at my advertisement and called me a fool, and I haven't had a peaceful thought since." "That's not an answer." "No," he agreed. "It's not." They stood there in the lamplight, two damaged people trying to navigate something neither fully understood. Finally, Rosalie stepped back. "Thank you for the bandage and for Beth. Lock your doors tonight, all of them." She watched him leave through the back door, disappearing into the darkness. Her palm throbbed beneath the bandage, but the pain felt distant, less real than the memory of his hands on hers. The next evening, Jake sat outside his cabin watching the sun paint the valley in shades of amber and rust. He'd spent the day repairing fence and trying not to think about green eyes and flame-colored hair. The work helped, but not enough. He heard the horse before he saw it, a careful approach, someone who knew how to move quiet. His hand found the Winchester propped against his chair. "Don't shoot," a familiar voice called. "I come in peace." Rosalie emerged from the gathering dusk, riding a borrowed mare. She'd traded her saloon finery for a simple riding skirt and blouse, but she still looked like trouble. "How'd you know where to find me?" "Everyone knows where the hermit Sullivan lives." She dismounted, movement stiff. "May I?" He gestured to the other chair. She sat, looking out over the valley with him. The silence stretched, comfortable in its way. "Why are you here?" he asked finally. "I wanted to thank you properly. What you did last night?" "Any man would have done the same." "No," she said firmly. "They wouldn't. Most would have looked the other way. Some might have joined in." "Then you've known the wrong men." "Story of my life." She pulled something from her pocket. "A flask. Thought you might share a drink with me, unless that's too scandalous for a man seeking a Christian wife." He accepted the flask, took a sip. Good whiskey, smooth and warm. Nothing in the Bible against sharing a drink with a friend. "Is that what we are, friends?" "I don't know what we are," he admitted. "But I know I was glad you were safe last night. I know I would have killed those men if they'd hurt you. You barely know me." "I know enough." She took the flask back, drank deeply. "No, you don't. You see what you want to see, some fallen woman worth saving. I'm not your redemption project. Jake." "Never said you were." "Then what do you want from me?" He was quiet for a long time, watching the stars emerge one by one. "You asked me once if I was sure I wanted a quiet wife. Said maybe I was afraid of a fire that might burn down my carefully built walls." "I remember." "You were right." He turned to look at her. "I've been living half dead since the war, going through the motions. Then you walked into Tom's store in that red dress, all sass and vinegar, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years." "What?" "Alive." The words settled between them like a covenant. Rosalie stood abruptly, pacing to the porch rail. The valley spread below them, Redemption Creek's lights twinkling like fallen stars. "You don't understand," she said. "Men like you think they want women like me until they get us. Then the novelty wears off, and suddenly we're embarrassing, something to hide, to be ashamed of." "I'm not those men." "They all say that." "Have you ever given any of them a chance to prove it?" She whirled on him. "Yes, once, back in Kansas. A banker's son. Said he loved me. Said my past didn't matter, right up until his family threatened to cut him off. Then suddenly it mattered a whole lot." Jake stood, moving toward her slowly, like approaching a spooked horse. "I don't have a family to threaten me, no money to cut off, just this cabin and these hands and whatever time God sees fit to give me." "And you'd waste that time on me?" "Time spent with you doesn't feel wasted." She laughed, but it was shaky. "You really are a fool." "Maybe, but I'm a fool who knows what he wants." "And what's that?" He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "To see you laugh without that edge of bitterness. To know what you dream about. To find out if you're as fierce in tenderness as you are in anger." "Jake?" "Stay for dinner," he said. "Just dinner. No expectations. No promises. Just two people sharing a meal." She searched his face, looking for the lie, the trap, finding neither. She nodded slowly. "All right, but I don't cook." "Good thing I do." They went inside, and Jake busied himself with simple fare beans and cornbread. Nothing fancy. Rosalie explored the cabin, running her fingers over the few possessions he'd accumulated. A Bible, well worn. A photograph of a younger Jake in uniform, standing with men who were probably dead now. A carved wooden horse, delicate and precise. "You make this?" she asked. "Passes the time." He set plates on the table. "Sit, food's ready." They ate in comfortable quiet, the lamp casting warm shadows on the walls. Outside, coyotes called and the wind sang through the canyon. Inside, something fragile and unnamed grew between them. "I should go," Rosalie said finally. "It'll be full dark soon. I'll ride with you. I can take care of—" "I know you can, but let me anyway." They saddled his horse and rode down together, side by side through the gathering night. At the edge of town, Rosalie pulled up. "This is far enough. Can't have people talking more than they already do." "Let them talk. Easy for you to say. You're not the one they call whore when they think you can't hear." The word hung ugly in the air. Jake's jaw tightened. "Anyone says that in my hearing will regret it." "My hero," she said, but the mockery was gentle. "Thank you, for dinner, for everything." "Rosalie." He caught her hand as she turned to go. "The offer stands. Whenever you want to escape that saloon, even for a few hours, my door's open." She squeezed his fingers, then pulled away. "Careful, cowboy. Keep talking like that, and I might take you up on it." "I hope you do." She rode away without looking back, but he saw her shoulders shaking. Tears or laughter, he couldn't tell. Maybe both. In the distance, thunder rumbled. Another storm coming. But this time, Jake thought he might not mind the rain. The Wallace gang rode into Redemption Creek at dawn 3 days later, 20 strong and mean as rattlesnakes. Jake saw the dust cloud from his cabin and knew trouble had found them. These weren't drifters or common thieves. The Wallace brothers had terrorized the territory for 2 years, leaving burned towns and shallow graves in their wake. By the time Jake reached town, chaos reigned. The gang had split up, some looting the bank while others terrorized the businesses. Gunfire crackled through the morning air. Jake saw Tom McKenna dragged from his store, blood streaming from his temple. "Where's the sheriff?" Jake demanded of a fleeing townsman. "Dead, they shot him first thing." Jake cursed, checking his ammunition. 20 men against a town of shopkeepers and farmers. It would be a massacre. At the Silver Dollar, Rosalie heard the shooting and knew. She'd seen this before in Kansas, when law failed and civilization's mask slipped, revealing the beast beneath. Frank was already barricading the doors. "Get the girls upstairs," he ordered, "and get the guns." "Frank, there's too many—" "You want to wait for them like sheep?" The doors exploded inward. 3 gang members strutted in, wild-eyed and blood-drunk. The leader, a man with a scarred face and dead eyes, spotted Rosalie immediately. "Well, hello, darling. Looks like we're starting the celebration early." Frank went for his shotgun. The scarred man was faster, his pistol barking twice. Frank folded, red spreading across his shirt. "No," Rosalie dropped beside him, but his eyes were already going glassy. "Run," he whispered, then nothing. The scarred man grabbed her arm, yanking her upright. "Don't worry, sweetheart. We'll take good care of you." "Won't we, boys?" Their laughter was cut short by a rifle shot from outside. One of the gang members spun and fell. Jake appeared in the doorway, Winchester smoking. "Let her go." The scarred man pressed his pistol to Rosalie's temple. "I think not. Drop the rifle, or I decorate the wall with her brains." Jake hesitated. In that moment, Rosalie drove her elbow into her captor's ribs and twisted away. Jake's rifle spoke again, and the scarred man joined his companion on the floor. The 3rd gang member fled through the back. "We need to move," Jake said. "Now." Outside was bedlam. Buildings burned. Women screamed. Men fought desperate battles in the street. Jake pulled Rosalie into an alley as bullets whined overhead. "My horse is behind the church," he said. "We run for it." "What about the others, Beth? The girls?" "Can't save everyone. Come on." They ran, dodging through smoke and gunfire. A gang member emerged from a doorway. Jake shot him without breaking stride. Another tried to block their path. Rosalie snatched a dropped pistol and fired, surprising herself when the man fell. They reached Jake's horse as the church bell began to ring, not calling worshippers, but warning of fire. Half the town was burning now. Up! Jake swung into the saddle, pulling Rosalie behind him. She wrapped her arms around his waist as he spurred the horse toward the desert. Shouts erupted behind them. Bullets kicked up dust at their heels. Jake bent low over the horse's neck, riding hard for the canyon country he knew better than any map. They rode for an hour, pushing the horse to its limits. Finally, Jake guided them into a narrow canyon, following a dry creek bed between towering walls of red stone. He knew a place, a box canyon with water and shelter, defensible if it came to that. "They'll follow," Rosalie said when they finally stopped. Her voice was steady, but he felt her trembling against his back. "Let them. This is my country." He helped her down, noting the blood on her dress. "You hurt?" "It's not mine, Frank." Her voice broke. "I'm sorry. He wasn't a good man, but he was fair to us, kept us safe as he could." She wiped her eyes angrily. "God, I'm tired of watching people die." Jake pulled supplies from his saddlebags. Ammunition, hardtack, a canteen, always prepared. Old habits from the war. "There's an overhang up ahead. Good cover, fresh spring. We can hold out there." They climbed deeper into the canyon, the walls narrowing until they had to lead the horse. The overhang was as Jake remembered, a deep recession in the cliff face, protected on 3 sides. A spring bubbled from the rock, forming a small pool before disappearing into the sand. "How did you know about this place?" "I tracked a mountain lion here once. Decided not to disturb him, but remembered the spot." Jake unsaddled the horse, movements efficient. "Used to be Indian country, Apache, maybe. See the paintings." Rosalie looked where he pointed. Faded figures danced across the stone hunters and deer. Spirals and suns, art from a time before their troubles. "Beautiful," she whispered. "Life usually is, when folks aren't busy making it ugly." They settled in to wait. Jake positioned himself where he could watch the canyon entrance, rifle across his knees. Rosalie sat beside him, reloading the pistol she'd kept. "You ever fire one of those before today?" he asked. "No, guess I'm a natural." "Most people freeze their first time. You didn't." "Wasn't my first time watching someone I cared about get shot." She stared at the pistol in her hands. "My mother, I was 15. Dad came home drunk. She tried to take his gun away." She shrugged. "After that, I promised myself I'd never freeze again." "That why you ran?" "One reason. Dad tried to marry me off quick after that. Said I needed a firm hand. Josiah Crenshaw had the firmest hands in the county." Jake's jaw tightened. He'd known men like that, who mistook cruelty for strength. "So I took what money I could find and bought a ticket west." Rosalie continued. "Thought I'd find freedom out here. Instead, I found just a different kind of cage." "You're free now." She laughed bitterly. "Am I running from killers? Hiding in a cave? This isn't freedom, Jake. It's just another way of being trapped." Before he could respond, the sound of horses echoed up the canyon. Jake counted hoofbeats. 4, maybe 5 riders. He checked his ammunition. 20 rounds for the rifle, plus Rosalie's pistol. Not enough if they came in force. "Stay back," he murmured. "If this goes bad, there's a path behind the spring. Leads up to the rim. Take the horse and—" "I'm not leaving you." "Rosalie!" "No." She met his eyes, fierce as any Apache warrior. "We stand together or not at all." The riders came into view. 5 men, armed and angry. Jake recognized one Bill Wallace himself, leader of the gang. They stopped just out of rifle range, studying the canyon. "Sullivan," Wallace's voice echoed off the walls. "We know you're up there. Send out the woman, and you can ride away." "Counteroffer," Jake called back. "You ride away now, and I don't put a bullet in your brain." Wallace laughed. "You always were a confident bastard. Heard about you, Confederate cavalry, Stone's brigade. They say you killed 20 Yankees at Yellow Tavern. I stopped counting. Just like I'll stop counting when I'm done with you. 5 against 1. You ain't that good. He's not alone, Rosalie called out, her voice carrying clear and strong. And I'm a real good shot when I'm angry. Right now, I'm furious. Silence. Then Wallace spoke again. You killed my brother. He was fixing to kill me, Rosalie replied. Seemed fair. Nothing about this is fair, girl. But it's how it is. Wallace turned to his men. Burn them out. Jake had expected this. As the gang dismounted, gathering brush and dried grass, he sighted carefully. The Winchester cracked, and one man spun and fell. The others scattered for cover. The siege began. The gang tried rushing twice, losing another man each time. Jake made every shot count, but ammunition dwindled. Smoke from their fires drifted up, making breathing difficult. How many rounds left? Rosalie asked. 6. She checked her pistol. 3. Not enough. They both knew it. The sun climbed higher, heat building in their stone shelter. Jake's throat burned with thirst, but they had to save water. Jake, Rosalie said quietly, I need to tell you something. Save it. We're getting out of this. No, listen, if I don't say it now... She touched his face, turning him toward her. You asked what I dream about. I dream about a life where my past doesn't matter, where I can walk down a street without shame, where someone looks at me and sees more than what I've had to do to survive. Rosalie, you look at me like that, like I'm worth saving. Tears tracked through the dust on her face. Nobody's ever done that before. He kissed her then, fierce and desperate. She tasted like smoke and tears and possibilities they might never have. When this is over, he said against her lips, I'm taking you away from here. California, Oregon, wherever you want. Somewhere nobody knows us, where we can start clean. Pretty dreams, Cowboy. Promise me, if something happens, you take that path and run. Find that new life. Not without you. Promise me. Before she could answer, Wallace shouted again. Last chance. Send her out, or we come in shooting. Jake and Rosalie exchanged looks. They'd made their choice. He raised the rifle. She gripped her pistol. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. The attack came from 2 directions. As the gang rushed their position, Jake picked his targets carefully. One man fell, then another, but there were too many. A bullet whined past his ear. Another sparked off stone. Then, incredibly, new gunfire erupted from the rim above. Jake looked up to see riders appearing along the canyon edge. Samuel Chen, the Chinese doctor, rifle in hand, Tom McKenna, bloodied but alive, a dozen townsmen who'd found their courage at last. Caught between 2 forces, the Wallace gang crumbled. Bill Wallace himself tried to flee, but Rosalie's pistol cracked. He tumbled from his horse and lay still. It was over in minutes. The surviving gang members threw down their weapons, hands high. The townsmen descended, grim-faced and efficient. Thought you might need help, Samuel said, offering his hand to Jake. The town owes you, both of you. The town's burning, Jake said. Parts of it. We'll rebuild. We always do. Samuel looked at Rosalie with something like respect. You saved Beth's life the other night. She made it to my house, told us where you'd gone. We came as soon as we could gather men. Rosalie sagged against Jake, exhaustion hitting her all at once. He wrapped an arm around her, holding her steady. What now? She asked. Now, Jake looked down at her, this fierce woman who'd stood with him against impossible odds. Now we go home. I don't have a home. The silver dollar. Yes, you do. He tilted her chin up, making her meet his eyes. If you want it. The canyon was silent, except for the spring's quiet bubble and the distant call of a hawk. Rosalie searched Jake's face, finding only truth. That's a hell of a proposal. Cowboy. I'm a hell of a man, and you're a hell of a woman. Seems fitting. She laughed, the sound echoing off ancient stones that had seen countless stories of survival and hope. You know I can't cook. I'll teach you. Can't sew either. I'm fair with a needle myself. And I've got a terrible temper. I've noticed, he smiled. Anything else I should know? She considered. I snore. So do I. Then I guess we're suited after all. They kissed again as the townsmen secured the prisoners. As the sun climbed toward noon, as the old life burned away, and something new took its place. In the end, he'd found what he was looking for. Not a quiet wife to warm his home, but a partner to share his life. And she'd found what she hadn't dared dream of, a man who saw her truly and loved her anyway. The canyon walls stood witness, adding their story to the countless others painted in stone and memory, testament to the enduring power of unlikely love in an unforgiving land. The canyon became their sanctuary. For 3 days after the shootout, Jake and Rosalie remained in the stone shelter, tending wounds and learning each other's rhythms. The town had sent word that the Wallace gang survivors were secured and awaiting transport to Tucson for trial. Redemption Creek was safe, for now, but neither felt ready to return. Show me, Rosalie said on their second morning, gesturing to the rifle. I need to know how to use one properly. Jake spent hours teaching her how to sight, breathe, squeeze the trigger. She was a quick study, determined and focused. By afternoon, she was hitting targets he'd set up across the canyon. You're a natural, he said, watching her reload with growing confidence. I have a good teacher. She glanced at him. You were different during the fight, colder, like you became someone else. Not someone else, just someone I used to be. He took the rifle, checking the action. War teaches you to split yourself, the man who kills and the man who loves. Problem is, sometimes you forget how to put the pieces back together. Are you back together now? He considered. Getting there. You help. That night, they sat by their small fire, watching stars emerge like scattered diamonds. The desert had cooled, and Rosalie huddled close to Jake for warmth. Their food was simple. Rabbits he'd snared, roots she'd found near the spring, but it tasted better than any feast. I've been thinking, she said, about California. What about it? You meant it about starting over there? Every word. He pulled her closer. There's a valley I heard about, up near Sacramento, good soil, plenty of water. Man could build something there. Raise horses, maybe some cattle. Build a real house, not just a cabin. And what would I do in this valley? Whatever you want, that's the point of starting over. She was quiet for a long moment. I don't know how to be a wife. Jake, I know how to pour drinks and dodge grabbing hands and smile when I want to scream. But the rest, I don't know how to be a husband. He admitted, never planned on it until recently. Figured I'd live alone, die alone. Seemed simpler. What changed? You walked into Tom's store in that red dress. She laughed softly. That all it took? No, it took you standing up to those drifters, fighting beside me against the Wallace gang, teaching me I don't have to carry everything alone. He kissed her temple. We'll learn together, make mistakes together, build something together. You make it sound easy. Nothing worth doing is easy, but it's possible, and that's enough for me. On the third night, nature made their decision for them. Jake woke to distant thunder and the smell of rain. In the desert, flash floods could turn a dry canyon into a raging torrent in minutes. We need to move, he said, already saddling the horse. Now. They climbed out just as the first drops fell. By the time they reached the rim, water was already flowing down the canyon walls. Within an hour, their shelter was submerged. Close, Rosalie breathed, watching the flood surge below. Too close. Jake turned the horse toward town. Time to stop hiding anyway. They rode through the storm, rain washing away the dust and blood of recent days. Lightning illuminated the desert in stark flashes, beautiful and terrible. Rosalie pressed against Jake's back, no longer afraid of the intimacy. Redemption Creek looked different in the rain. The fires were out, leaving black scars where buildings had stood. But already people were clearing debris, salvaging what they could. The human impulse to rebuild, to continue, stronger than destruction. They stopped first at Samuel Chen's house. The doctor examined their wounds with professional efficiency, clucking his tongue at Jake's rough field dressing. "You'll both heal clean," he pronounced, "though you, Miss Rosalie, should avoid heavy lifting for a week." "What about dancing?" she asked, then caught herself. "Not that I mean..." Samuel smiled. "I think your dancing days at the Silver Dollar are done. Frank left papers. He had no family, so he willed the saloon to his girls. Equal shares for all of you. Beth and the others want to rebuild. Run it as a proper establishment. Rooms to rent, meals served, entertainment that doesn't require..." He cleared his throat. "Well, a respectable business." Rosalie's eyes widened. "He left us the saloon. Said you'd earned it. All of you." Samuel glanced between them. "Of course. If you have other plans..." Jake squeezed her hand. "That's her choice to make." They left Samuel's and walked through town, rain still falling steadily. People nodded respectfully, some even tipping their hats. The story of the canyon fight had spread, growing in the telling. Jake Sullivan and Rosalie Harper, heroes of Redemption Creek. "Strange," Rosalie murmured. "Yesterday I was a saloon girl. Today they treat me like Joan of Arc." "You saved their town. That matters more than what came before." They reached the ruins of the Silver Dollar. Beth and 2 other girls were there, sorting through salvageable items. Beth ran to Rosalie, embracing her tearfully. "We thought you were dead when the Wallace gang came, and then you disappeared." "Jake kept me safe." Rosalie pulled back, studying the younger girl. "Samuel told me about Frank's will." "We want to rebuild," Beth said eagerly. "Make it respectable. A hotel, maybe a restaurant, somewhere families could come. Will you help us?" Rosalie looked at the blackened timbers, seeing possibilities. Then she looked at Jake, seeing a different future entirely. "I'll help you get started," she said finally. "Draw up plans, find investors, but I won't be staying." "You're leaving." Beth's face fell. "I'm getting married." The words hung in the air. Jake's breath caught. They hadn't actually discussed marriage, just partnership, building a life together. But hearing her say it, simple and certain, something loosened in his chest. "Married." Beth looked between them, understanding dawning. To him, "If he'll have me," Rosalie said, not looking at Jake. "Already said I would." Jake replied, "Question is whether you'll have me." She turned to him then, rain streaming down her face like tears. "You're sure, even knowing what I've been?" "I know who you are. That's what matters." Beth squealed, hugging them both. The other girls gathered around, congratulating and crying. In the midst of destruction, life insisted on celebrating itself. They were married 3 days later by Circuit Judge Morrison, who happened to be passing through. The ceremony was simple. A few words in Samuel Chen's parlor. Tom McKenna and his wife as witnesses. Rosalie wore a borrowed dress of pale blue. Jake his one good shirt. "Do you, Jacob Michael Sullivan, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." "Do you, Rosalie Marie Harper, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" "I do." "Then, by the power vested in me by the territory of Arizona, I pronounce you man and wife." They kissed, and it was different from before. Not desperate, but promising. A beginning, not an ending. That night, in Jake's cabin on the hill, they came together as husband and wife. The passion between them had always been there. simmering beneath the surface. Now it exploded like wildfire, consuming and renewing in equal measure. "Is it always like this?" Rosalie gasped, tangled in sheets and moonlight. "No," Jake said, tracing patterns on her skin. "Sometimes it's better." She laughed, the sound free of bitterness at last. "Show me." He did. Later, as dawn crept through the windows, they lay entwined, planning their future. California in the spring, when the passes cleared, a piece of land near water. Horses, definitely, children, maybe. "No regrets?" Jake asked. "About last night, definitely not. That bed frame never stood a chance." He chuckled. "About all of it? Giving up your independence, tying yourself to a broken-down ex-soldier with more scars than sense." She propped herself on an elbow, studying his face. "You're not broken. Bent, maybe. Scarred, definitely. But not broken. And neither am I. We're just weathered. Like this land. Survived things that should have killed us. Still standing despite it all. Poetic for this hour. You inspire me." She kissed him softly. "No regrets. Jake, for the first time in my life, I'm exactly where I want to be." Outside, a coyote called to greet the sunrise. The desert stretched endless and unforgiving, but no longer empty. They had each other now, and that made all the difference. "We should get up," Jake said without conviction. "Chores to do." "In a minute." Rosalie settled against his chest. "Just want to remember this. The morning I woke up free." "We both did," Jake murmured into her hair. They stayed like that as the sun climbed higher, painting the cabin walls gold. Two souls who'd found each other in the wilderness, building something new from the ashes of what came before. The bed frame, sturdy pine that Jake had built himself, bore new stress fractures. Neither of them minded. They'd build a stronger one in California, along with everything else they'd need for their new life. But for now, this was enough. More than enough. It was everything. The peace lasted exactly 2 weeks. Jake was mending harnesses in the barn when he heard the horses, too many for friendly visitors. He grabbed his rifle and moved to the door, watching 6 riders approach. Not random drifters this time. These men rode with purpose, dust-covered badges glinting in the afternoon sun. Jake Sullivan, the lead rider, a thin man with cold eyes, remained mounted. "Deputy U.S., Marshal Coleman. Need to ask you some questions about the Wallace gang incident." "Already told Sheriff Watson everything. The gang's dead or captured." "Not all of them." Coleman produced a wanted poster. "Red Thompson, Wallace's lieutenant. Word is he's heading this way. Looking for revenge. Lost his brother in that canyon fight." Jake studied the poster. He'd seen Red Thompson during the raid. A vicious killer with dead eyes and a reputation for cruelty. "Haven't seen him. He'll come for you. And that woman of yours." Coleman's lip curled slightly on woman, and Jake's hands tightened on the rifle. "Might be best if she left town for a while. Visit family, maybe?" "She is family. My wife." The deputies exchanged glances. Coleman cleared his throat. "That's so, well, matrimony don't stop bullets. Thompson's got 8 men with him. They hit a ranch 2 days south. Killed everyone. Even the children." Jake's blood ran cold, but his voice stayed level. "Appreciate the warning." Coleman wheeled his horse around. "We'll be in town a few days. Try to keep Thompson from burning the whole place down. But if he comes for you personal," he shrugged. "That's your lookout." They rode off in a cloud of dust and foreboding. Jake stood in the doorway, mind racing. 8 killers coming for vengeance, and the law washing its hands of them. Rosalie appeared from the cabin, flour in her hair from attempted baking. "Who was that?" "Trouble." He told her about Red Thompson, watching her face pale beneath its sun-kissed color. "We could run," she said quietly. "Leave tonight. Head for California like we planned." Could. Jake set the rifle aside, pulled her close. But Thompson would follow. Men like him don't give up. We'd be looking over our shoulders forever. So we stay and fight 2 against 9. Not 2. He kissed her forehead. Never just 2. Come on, we're going to town. They found Samuel Chen at his surgery, setting a cowboy's broken arm. He listened to Jake's plan with growing concern. You're asking people to risk their lives, Samuel said. I'm asking them to defend their homes. Thompson won't stop with us. The whole town's a target. Jake's right, Tom McKenna said from the doorway. He'd been listening, along with several other townsmen. We let those bastards, Mrs. Sullivan, we let them ride in here unchallenged. We might as well pack up and leave. I'm no gunfighter, said Patterson, the blacksmith. Got a family to think of. We all do, Jake replied. That's the point. We make a stand together, or we fall separately. The debate raged for an hour. Fear wrestled with courage, self-preservation with community spirit. Finally, Rosalie stood. You all know what I was, she said quietly. The room fell silent. Saloon girl, worse in some minds. But when the Wallace gang came, this town protected me. Jake risked everything for me. Now they're coming back, and you want to debate? She looked each man in the eye. I've seen what men like Thompson do to places that don't fight back. I've lived it. You think they'll spare your wives, your daughters, because you didn't resist? They'll take what they want and burn the rest. At least if we fight, we die with dignity. Pretty words, Coleman said from the doorway, his deputies behind him. But dying's dying, dignity or not. Then why wear that badge? Rosalie challenged. If the law won't protect people, what good is it? Coleman's face darkened. Careful, woman. Your past ain't so clean that you can lecture me about law and order. Jake stepped forward, but Rosalie caught his arm. My past is exactly why I can lecture you. I've seen what happens when the law fails. When men with badges look the other way because it's easier, safer. She moved closer to Coleman. You took an oath. Does it mean nothing? For a moment, violence crackled in the air. Then Coleman laughed, harsh and bitter. You got sand. I'll give you that. Tell you what, Thompson shows up. We'll do our duty. But I won't go hunting trouble. Fair enough, Jake said. All we ask is you stand with us if it comes. That night, Jake and Rosalie prepared for siege. They brought supplies from town. Ammunition, food, medical supplies. The cabin's position on the hill gave them good sight lines, but also made them exposed. We could fort up in town, Rosalie suggested, loading shells. Strength in numbers. Thompson's smart. He'd burn us building by building. Jake checked the windows, planning fields of fire. Here, we see them coming. Make them come to us. And if they don't, if they go for the town instead, then we hit them from behind. He paused in his work, studying her. You don't have to do this. There's still time. Stop! She crossed to him, framed his face with her hands. Where you stand, I stand. Where you fight, I fight. That's what marriage means. Most marriages don't include gunfights. We're not most marriages. She kissed him hard. Now show me how to build a barricade. They worked through the night, fortifying their position. As dawn broke, Jake stood on the porch, scanning the horizon. Somewhere out there, death approached on horseback, but for the first time in years, he wasn't facing it alone. See anything? Rosalie joined him, coffee in hand. Not yet, but they're coming. How do you know? Feel it, like before a storm. He accepted the coffee gratefully. Same feeling I had before battles. The waiting's almost worse than the fighting. What did you do during the war? I mean, to handle the waiting. Jake was quiet for a moment, remembering. Wrote letters I'd never send. Carved things. Tried not to think about after. because there might not be one. But there was. You survived. Part of me did. He looked at her. The best part found you. She leaned against him, watching the sun climb. Whatever happens, Jake, I want you to know, these last weeks have been the happiest of my life. You gave me something I never thought I'd have. What's that? A home. Not just a place, but belonging. Being chosen. Choosing back. She smiled sadly. If that's all we get, it's more than most. It's not all we get, Jake said firmly. We're going to survive this. Build that ranch in California. Raise horses and children and hell when necessary. Children, she looked up at him, something vulnerable in her eyes. You'd want, with me, many as you'll give me, little girls with your fire, boys with your courage, and your stubbornness. That too. He set down the coffee, pulled her close. We're going to live. Rosalie, long, full lives. This is just another test. You promise? I promise. The sun climbed higher, painting the desert in shades of gold and amber. Somewhere a hawk cried, hunting in the new day. Life continuing, oblivious to human drama. Then Jake saw it, a dust cloud on the southern horizon. Moving steady, purposeful, he counted the pillars of dust. 9 riders, just as Coleman had said. They're coming, he said quietly. Rosalie nodded. No fear in her eyes now, just determination. Then we'd better get ready. They took their positions, weapons loaded and ready. In town, the church bell began to toll, not calling worshippers, but warning of danger. Jake had arranged the signal with Samuel Chen. Now everyone would know the storm was about to break. Jake, Rosalie called from her position. Remember what I said that first day about cowboys wanting brides to warm their homes? Until sassy saloon girls heat their beds, he finished. I remember. Still true, except now I want to warm your home too, for the rest of our lives. Then let's make sure we have lives to live. The riders drew closer, and Jake could make out details now. Red Thompson rode in front, distinctive even at a distance. Massive man with flame-red hair and a beard to match. The others spread out in a skirmish line, professional and deadly. Here they come, Jake murmured. But instead of charging, the riders stopped just out of rifle range. Thompson rode forward alone, hands visible but near his guns. Jake Sullivan. His voice carried clear in the morning air. You killed my brother. Your brother was murdering scum, Jake called back. He got what he deserved. Maybe so, but blood demands blood. You know how this goes. I know you're a dead man if you come any closer. Thompson laughed. Look around. Sullivan, count the guns. You can't win. Don't have to win, just have to make it cost more than you're willing to pay. And what about her, that whore you married? What's she worth to you? Jake's finger tightened on the trigger, but Rosalie's voice rang out before he could shoot. I'm worth more than your whole worthless gang. Thompson worth more than your dead brother, too. Thompson's face darkened. Big talk from a saloon slut. This saloon slut helped kill half the Wallace gang. Want to try your luck? For a moment, the tableau held 9 killers facing 2 defenders, death hanging in the balance. Then, impossibly, Jake heard horses from the north, lots of them. Coleman and his deputies crested the hill, but they weren't alone. Tom McKenna rode with them, and Patterson, and a dozen other townsmen. Even Samuel Chen was there, medical bag tied to his saddle but rifle in hand. Morning, Thompson. Coleman called out, casual as discussing weather. Heard you were in the area. Thought we'd come say hello. Thompson's hand twitched toward his gun. This ain't your fight, Marshal. Sure it is. These folks are under my protection. You got a problem with that? The odds had shifted. 9 against 2 had become 9 against 20. Thompson might be vicious, but he wasn't stupid. This ain't over. Sullivan, he snarled. Yeah, it is, Jake replied. You ride out now. Don't come back, and we all live to see sunset. Or you can try your luck. Your choice. For a long moment, violence balanced on a knife's edge. Then Thompson wheeled his horse around. Come on, boys. Nothing for us here. They rode away, dust and defeated pride trailing behind them. The townsmen held position until the riders disappeared over the horizon, then erupted in nervous celebration. Coleman approached Jake and Rosalie as they emerged from cover. That was either very brave or very stupid, challenging them like that. Both, Rosalie admitted. But it worked. This time. Coleman's expression softened slightly. You've got grit, both of you. Town's lucky to have you. We won't be staying, Jake said. California in the spring, like we planned. Shame. Could use folks like you. Coleman tipped his hat. Until then, watch your backs. Thompson might be gone, but men like him got long memories. As the crowd dispersed, Rosalie caught Jake's arm. Did you mean it? We're still going to California? Soon as the pass is clear, this was our stand. But it's not our home, not anymore. Then where is home? He pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her hair, gunpowder and jasmine, danger and beauty combined. Wherever you are, that's home. She smiled against his chest. Smooth talker. No wonder I married you. Thought it was my cooking. That too. She pulled back, looking up at him with eyes full of promise. Come on, husband. Let's go see about that bed frame. All this excitement's got me feeling energetic. Jake laughed, sweeping her up in his arms. Woman, you'll be the death of me. But what a way to go. They went inside, leaving weapons and worries on the porch. Outside, the desert stretched endless under the morning sun. But inside was warmth and laughter and the promise of all the tomorrows they'd fought to protect. The bed frame creaked ominously, but held, testament to Jake's craftsmanship and their enthusiasm. Later, they'd joke about it. Now, there were better things to focus on than furniture. They'd stood against the storm and survived. Everything else was just details. The town had begun to rebuild in earnest when Red Thompson returned, not with guns blazing, but with something far more dangerous, the law on his side. Jake first heard the commotion from the mercantile where he and Rosalie were buying supplies for their planned departure. Shouting in the street, horses, and underneath it all, Thompson's distinctive growl. What special kind of fool comes back here? Rosalie muttered. But Jake was already moving to the window. Thompson sat his horse in the middle of Main Street, but this time he wore a deputy's badge. Beside him rode a heavy-set man with the unmistakable bearing of authority, a federal judge by his dress. Citizens of Redemption Creek, the judge bellowed. I am Circuit Judge Harlan Morse. Here on official business, I require Jake Sullivan and his wife to present themselves immediately. Stay here, Jake said, but Rosalie was already beside him. We face this together, remember? They stepped onto the boardwalk. The street had filled with townspeople, confusion and concern on every face. Coleman and his deputies were notably absent. Judge Morse, Jake said evenly. What's this about? Murder, Mr. Sullivan. The murder of William Wallace and his associates. The judge produced a sheaf of papers. I have here sworn testimony that you and your wife ambushed and killed these men without provocation. That's a lie. Tom McKenna pushed forward. The Wallace gang terrorized this town. Jake defended us. Silence, Morse commanded. I'll have order or I'll have you all in irons. Thompson smiled, ugly and triumphant. See? Judge, like I told you, this whole town's in on it. Conspiracy to commit murder? The only conspiracy here is yours, Rosalie said, her voice cutting through the murmurs. How much did you pay him? Thompson, or did you promise him a cut of whatever you planned to steal? Morse's face purpled. How dare you impugn my integrity? Woman, your reputation precedes you, a saloon entertainer who seduced an honest man into marriage to escape justice. Honest man, Thompson laughed. She's got you there. Judge, though I'd hardly call Sullivan honest. Confederate deserter, bounty hunter, killer for hire. I never deserted, Jake said quietly, dangerously. And every man I killed needed killing, including your brother. Confession, Morse crowed. You all heard it, Deputy Thompson. Arrest these murderers. Thompson dismounted, hand on his gun, but before he could draw, Samuel Chen stepped from his office, a telegram in his hand. Gentlemen, before this proceeds, perhaps you should read this. It's from the Territorial Governor's office. Morse snatched the paper, read it, and his face went from purple to white. How did you... I sent an inquiry the moment I saw Thompson wearing a badge, Samuel said calmly. It seems Judge Morse was removed from the bench 2 months ago for corruption. He has no authority here. The crowd stirred, anger building. Thompson's hand twitched toward his gun, but now he faced dozens of armed townspeople. Easy, folks, a new voice drawled. Coleman appeared from the hotel, his deputies flanking him. Been doing some investigating on my own. Turns out Thompson here killed the real deputy 3 days ago. Took his badge. That makes him a murderer, and you, Morse, an accomplice. This is preposterous, Morse blustered. You demand nothing. Coleman cut him off. Boys, arrest these two, and if Thompson makes one wrong move, shoot him down like the dog he is. Thompson's face contorted with rage. His hand flew to his gun, fast as a striking snake, but Jake was faster. His coat cleared leather and roared once. Thompson spun and fell, clutching his shoulder. Could have killed you, Jake said, gun still trained on the fallen man. Be grateful I'm not like you. As Coleman's deputies secured the prisoners, Rosalie touched Jake's arm. Why didn't you kill him? He would have killed you. Because we're trying to build something better. Can't do that if we act like them. The crowd dispersed slowly. Justice served, but unease lingering. Thompson's presence, even wounded and chained, cast a shadow over the town's fragile peace. That evening, Jake and Rosalie sat with Coleman in the hotel dining room. The marshal looked tired, older than his years. Thompson has friends, he said without preamble. Men worse than him. This won't end with his arrest. We know, Jake replied. Why we're leaving come spring? Might want to make it sooner. Coleman poured whiskey for all three. Word spreads fast out here. Every gunman looking to make a reputation will hear about Jake Sullivan, the man who faced down 2 gangs and lived. Let them come, Rosalie said fiercely. We've handled worse. No. Jake covered her hand with his. Coleman's right. We've been lucky so far, but luck runs out. Time to go. Where it's December, the passes. South, Coleman interrupted. Mexico, then shipped to California. I can arrange papers. Make sure you're not followed. Jake studied the lawman. Why help us? Because you did what I couldn't. Stood up when it mattered. Town needs to remember that's possible. He raised his glass. To courage. They drank, the whiskey burning away some of the day's bitterness. But Rosalie noticed Jake's distant look, the way his hand stayed near his gun. Later, in their cabin, she confronted him. You're planning something, without me. He turned from the window where he'd been standing guard. Thompson has 8 more men out there. They'll come for him, or for revenge if he hangs. Either way, we handle it together. She crossed to him, fierce as any Apache warrior. You don't get to protect me by leaving me behind. Rosalie. No. Remember what I said in the canyon? We stand together or not at all. She gripped his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. I've lost everything else. I won't lose you to some misguided nobility. He pulled her close, breathing in her strength. I can't lose you either. These weeks, having you, it's been... I know. She kissed him soft and deep. So we're smart. We prepare. And we leave together. They spent the next days in preparation. Jake sold his stock, keeping only his best horse and one pack animal. Rosalie helped Beth and the girls finalize plans for the new establishment, signing over her share for enough money to start fresh. But trouble came sooner than expected. 3 nights before their planned departure, Jake woke to silence. The wrong kind. No coyotes. No wind. Even the insects hushed. He reached for his gun as the window exploded. Down! He rolled off the bed, pulling Rosalie with him as bullets splintered the headboard. They crawled to their defensive positions, glass crunching beneath them. Muzzle flashes lit the darkness outside. 3, maybe 4 shooters. How many? Rosalie asked, admirably calm. Not the whole gang. Advance party, maybe. Jake fired through the window, heard a yelp. They're testing us. The siege was brief but vicious. Jake and Rosalie returned fire methodically, making every shot count. One attacker tried rushing the door. Rosalie dropped him at the threshold. Another attempted the roof. Jake heard him fall with a crash. Then, as suddenly as it began, it ended. Horses galloping away. 2 bodies in the yard. Dawn creeping over the mountains. You hit? Jake asked. No, you... I'm fine. But his shirt showed blood where flying glass had cut him. They emerged cautiously. Both dead men wore deputy badges, more of Thompson's fake lawmen. Inside the cabin, their bed was destroyed, the headboard reduced to splinters. There goes another bed frame, Rosalie said, and despite everything, they laughed. Coleman arrived with the sunrise, face grim. Thompson escaped during the attack. Morse, too. My deputy. He shook his head. This is my fault. No, Jake said. It's mine for not killing Thompson when I had the chance. Mercy isn't weakness, Coleman said, but sometimes it has a price. They surveyed the damage. The cabin could be repaired, but the message was clear. Nowhere in Redemption Creek was safe now. We leave today. Jake decided, soon as we can pack. I'll escort you to the border. Coleman offered. Least I can do. They packed light clothes, weapons, money, a few precious mementos. Jake carved a final piece while Rosalie said her goodbyes in town. A small wooden heart he pressed into her hand as they mounted up. For luck, he said. Don't need luck, she smiled, sad but determined. Got you. The ride south was tense, every shadow a potential ambush. But Coleman had chosen their route well, and his presence discouraged pursuit. At the border, he shook Jake's hand. Watch your backs. Thompson's like a rabid dog now, won't stop until he's put down. Then we'll put him down if he follows. Jake said simply. Coleman turned to Rosalie. You've been good for this man, and for this town. We won't forget. Take care of Beth and the girls, she said. They deserve better than what they've had. They'll get it. They crossed into Mexico as the sun set, painting the desert in shades of blood and gold. Behind them lay Redemption Creek and all its ghosts. Ahead waited the unknown. Regrets? Jake asked as they made camp. About leaving, Rosalie considered. No, that was never home. Just a stopping place. She looked at him across the fire. Ask me again when we reach California. What do you think you'll say? She smiled, mysterious as the desert night. Depends on whether you finally build me a bed frame that can handle us. He laughed, the sound carrying across the empty land. Challenge accepted. They slept under stars, bodies close for warmth and comfort, somewhere behind them. Thompson nursed his wounds and hatred, somewhere ahead. California waited with its promises. But for now, they had this each other, the vast silence, and the knowledge that they'd chosen their path together. It was dangerous, uncertain, probably foolish. It was also the only choice worth making. In the morning, they'd ride on, toward the coast and ships and new beginnings. But tonight, they were simply Jake and Rosalie, two souls who'd found each other in the wilderness and refused to let go. The fire burned low. Coyotes called in the distance, and the desert kept its ancient watch. And in a rough camp on the border between old life and new, love proved stronger than fear, hope more enduring than regret. They'd need both for what was coming. The Mexican sun was merciless, but not as merciless as the men following them. Jake spotted the dust cloud at midday, riders moving fast, too fast for honest travelers. "Company," he told Rosalie, nodding toward their back trail. She shaded her eyes, counting. 6, maybe 7. Think it's Thompson. Has to be. Nobody else wants us dead that badly. They pushed harder, but their packhorse was struggling in the heat. The port of Guaymas lay 2 days ahead. 2 days they might not have... There. Rosalie pointed to a cluster of rocks rising from the desert. "We make our stand there." Jake wanted to argue, to find another way, but she was right. Better to choose their ground than be run down in the open. They reached the rocks as the sun touched the horizon, painting everything in shades of amber and blood. Working together with practiced efficiency, they set up their defense, ammunition distributed, sightlines checked, water rationed. "Just like the canyon," Rosalie said, checking her rifle. "Except this time we're alone." "We were alone then too, at first." She touched his face. "We survived that. We'll survive this." The riders appeared as full dark fell, spreading out to surround the rocks. Jake counted 7, including Thompson's distinctive silhouette. "Sullivan," Thompson's voice carried in the still air. "You cost me everything. My brother, my reputation, my future. You cost yourself those things." Jake called back. "Should have stayed gone." "Can't do that. Not until I watch you both bleed out in this God-forsaken desert." Big talk from a fake lawman. Rosalie added, "How's that shoulder feeling, Thompson?" His curses echoed off the rocks, followed by gunfire. The siege had begun. It was a long night. Thompson's men probed their defenses, testing, searching for weakness. Jake and Rosalie fired sparingly, making each shot count. One attacker fell, then another, but ammunition dwindled. "How many rounds left?" Rosalie asked as dawn approached. 12 for the rifle, maybe 20 for the pistols." "Not enough." "No." Jake reloaded carefully. "But maybe enough to make them think twice." The morning brought negotiation attempts. Thompson sent Morse forward, the corrupt judge sweating profusely. "Be reasonable," Morse wheezed. "Surrender the woman, Sullivan. You can walk away. Thompson gives his word." "Thompson's word isn't worth the spit it takes to say it." Jake replied, "Then you'll both die here." "Maybe, but you'll die first. Morse, I promise you that." The judge scurried back to cover. Jake turned to find Rosalie watching him with soft eyes. "You could, walk away. I wouldn't blame you." "Yes, you would." He kissed her, tasting dust and determination. "And I'd blame myself. We're past that kind of thinking. Rosalie, whatever comes, we face it together." The final attack came at noon. Thompson had lost patience, sending all his remaining men at once. Gunfire erupted from every direction, bullets whining off stone, showering them with fragments. Jake fought with cold precision, dropping one man, wounding another, beside him. Rosalie was magnificent, calm, deadly, every shot carefully placed. But there were too many, and their ammunition ran low, then out. "That's it," Jake said, throwing aside his empty rifle. "Pistols only now." They stood back to back as the outlaws closed in, ready for the last stand. Jake thought of all the things they'd never do. The ranch in California, the children they'd never raise, the life they'd never build. Then, Impossibly. New gunfire erupted. Not at them, but at Thompson's men. Riders poured from the desert of Mexican cavalry, badges glinting in the sun. At their head rode Coleman, his deputies beside him. The outlaws scattered, caught between two forces. Thompson tried to flee, but his horse went down. Shot from under him, he rolled to his feet, gun in hand, facing Jake across 20 yards of sand. Just you and me now, Sullivan. How it should be. They drew simultaneously. 2 shots cracked as one. Jake felt the bullet burn past his cheek, close enough to singe. Thompson stood for a moment, looking surprised at the spreading red on his shirt. Then he fell, raising dust that settled like a shroud. It was over in minutes. The survivors threw down their weapons, hands high. Coleman dismounted, grinning through his exhaustion. Thought you might need help. Been tracking you since the border. How? Rosalie asked, lowering her pistol with shaking hands. Telegraphed to the Mexican authorities. Professional courtesy. He looked at Thompson's body. He dead. Jake checked, nodded. Finally. Good. Saves paperwork. Coleman turned to his Mexican counterpart, a stern captain named Delgado. These two are under my protection. Heroes of Redemption Creek. Delgado studied them, taking in their battered appearance, their defensive position, the bodies of outlaws. Heroes, yes, also troublemakers. You leave Mexico soon. See. First ship to California, Jake promised. Bueno, we escort you to Guaymas. No more trouble. They buried the dead in the desert, marking no graves. Thompson and his men would be forgotten, swallowed by the sand and silence. Only their violence would be remembered, and then only as a cautionary tale. The ride to Guaymas passed in exhausted silence. At the port, Coleman saw them to a merchant ship bound for San Francisco. This is goodbye, then, he said at the gangplank. Thank you. Jake shook his hand. For everything. Thank you, both of you. You reminded an old lawman why the job matters. He tipped his hat to Rosalie. Ma'am, you ever get tired of this fellow? There's always a place for you in Redemption Creek. I'll keep that in mind, she smiled. But I think I'll stick with him a while longer. Coleman left them at the ship. They stood at the rail as Guaymas faded into the distance. Mexico's coast becoming a brown line. Then nothing. It's over, Rosalie said quietly. Really over. The running and fighting, yes, the rest is just beginning. She leaned against him, scared. Terrified. You... Same, she laughed, the sound carrying across the waves. But excited, too. We get to start fresh. Jake, build something from nothing? Together. Together. The voyage took 3 weeks. They spent it healing, from wounds physical and otherwise. Jake taught Rosalie to play chess with a set borrowed from the captain. She taught him card tricks that would have made her fortune in any gambling hall. San Francisco rose from the morning fog like a dream. The city sprawled across its hills, alive with possibility. They disembarked among crowds of fellow dreamers, all seeking their fortunes in the Golden State. Where to? Rosalie asked, overwhelmed by the noise and motion after weeks at sea. North, Sacramento Valley. Find that land I told you about. And then we build house first, a real one, not a cabin. Barn for the horses. Maybe a workshop where I can do my carving. Don't forget the bed, she said, eyes dancing. Extra strong frame. Woman, you have a one-track mind. And you love it. God help me, I do. They bought supplies and a wagon, heading inland as spring painted the hills green. The land opened before them, vast and fertile. Nothing like the desert they'd left behind. When they found it, a piece of bottomland with good water and sheltering oaks, they both knew. Here, Jake said simply. Here, Rosalie agreed. They made camp under the stars one last time, Tomorrow would begin the real work of building their life. But tonight was for remembering how far they'd come. "Any regrets?" Jake asked, echoing his question from that night at the border. Rosalie considered, then smiled. "Just one." "What's that?" "I should have hit you with that bottle the day we met. Would have saved us both a lot of trouble." He laughed, pulling her close. "But what a story we'd have missed." True. Cowboy wanted a bride to warm his home. Until a sassy saloon girl heated his bed until the frame snapped. Jake finished. "Still the best thing that ever happened to me." The frame snapping. "You impossible woman! You!" They kissed under California stars, survivors of their own Wild West story. Tomorrow they'd start building. The house, the barn, the life they'd fought so hard to claim. There would be challenges, certainly. Hard work, definitely. But tonight, they had each other and the whole future spread before them like an unwritten page. It was more than most got, and everything they needed. In the distance, a coyote called, not the desert song they knew, but something greener, speaking of new lands and new chances. Jake and Rosalie listened, wrapped in each other and possibilities, and knew they were finally home. The bed frame, when Jake built it months later, was reinforced with iron. It never broke, though certainly tested. Their children, when they came, would joke about their parents' mysterious smiles whenever furniture creaked. But that's another story, for another time. This one ends here, with two souls who found each other against all odds and held on through every storm. Love in the Wild West, as untamed and enduring as the land itself. Some called it luck, others destiny. Jake and Rosalie just called it home. Thank you for listening to this Wild West love story. I'm curious to know where in the world you're enjoying this tale. Please share in the comments below where you're listening from, so we can connect across the miles. Don't forget to subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts about Jake and Rosalie's journey. Did their story touch your heart? What was your favorite moment? Let me know in the comments.